Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unraveling a pretty fascinating historical mystery. I mean, think about the titles and labels we throw around every single day. Some are obviously titles of absolute honor, right? While others, well, they have a much darker, kind of hidden origin. We're going to explore a very well-known historical title from the 1st century that, believe it or not, actually started out as a totally degrading insult. It is literally a classic case of history hiding in plain sight. And understanding this, it completely changes how we view the people who are forced to wear that label.
Okay, let's dive into this. Why exactly was a famous historical title actually a degrading insult? Well, to answer that, we kind of have to rethink how we study history. We can't just look at dusty maps and dates. We truly learn about historical figures through their social associations. The groups they hung out with, the people they interacted with, and honestly, most importantly, the names they were called by other people. Those social connections give us the actual raw texture of their daily lives.
Because learning about people by their associations is incredibly revealing, especially in our study of people who lived during Lord Jesus' lifetime. Back in the 1st century, labels and titles, they weren't just simple descriptors like they often are for us today. They carried incredibly heavy social weight. I mean, they dictated who you could trade with, who you could eat with, and exactly where you stood in the whole social hierarchy. Understanding these labels peels back the layers of history, and it reveals the raw reality of their daily existence, separating the honored elite from the totally marginalized. So let's actually look at the etymological root of the word Nazarene to see how this builds our understanding. The Hebrew spelling shares the exact same root letters as the word Nezer, which translates to a twig, a sprout, a shoot, a sprig, or branch. Right, so it absolutely wasn't a term of grand stature or power, like a mighty oak tree or something. It was something small, easily broken, and honestly, highly insignificant. And this brilliantly illustrates a very simple but funny question directly from the text. Who would want to be called a twig? I mean, seriously, imagine walking into a room today and having someone introduce you as the sprout or the sprig. It's hard not to chuckle at how dismissive that sounds. But in a highly structured, status-driven ancient society, this definitely wasn't just a friendly joke. It was a deeply degrading insult meant to belittle and totally minimize the importance of the person receiving the label. It was basically society's way of saying, you do not matter. So the crucial point here is how this tiny little word caused such a massive historical fallout. This degrading insult actually became the specific identifying label for early Christians. They were known as the Nazarenes. In fact, St. Paul himself was famously accused by the authorities of being a ringleader of this exact sect. Early historians documented them specifically as Christian Jews, which was a group that actually maintained their traditional Jewish mode of life while following their new beliefs. And to put that historical perspective into focus, in a landscape filled with really intense, politically charged factions, like think about the fearsome, rebellion-focused zealots who are out there aggressively demanding power and respect, being labeled a mere twig was a really stark contrast. What started as a way to mock them, ironically, became the enduring historical name for a group that would eventually shape the whole course of history. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that all of these fascinating linguistic insights are grounded directly in the book Major Jewish Groups in the New Testament, which was published by St. Shinoda Press in April 2022. It's absolutely vital to trace these historical discoveries back to their primary source material. Looking at the exact texts lets us really appreciate the depth of academic research that goes into uncovering the complex daily realities of the 1st century. And the rigorous academic credibility behind this work comes from the author himself, Bishoy Boulos. He is a subdeacon and a professor of Old Testament, holding extensive degrees, a Bachelor of Education and Theology, and a Master of Biblical Studies. So he brings a deeply specialized expertise to the table. This deep understanding of ancient languages and cultures is exactly why we can trust these rich, hidden meanings uncovered in words like Nazarene. It just goes to show the high value and reliability of the information we've just walked through. Which brings us to a really compelling final thoughts. If a major historical label like Nazarene actually began as an insult meaning twig, what other historical titles might have hidden humble roots? Just think about it. How many other grand historical names started as just a way to mock, dismiss, or minimize someone? I highly encourage you to actively keep questioning the hidden historical associations of other ancient words, because history is rarely just what's presented on the surface, right? It's hidden in the associations, the insults, and the everyday language of the past. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep that curiosity alive.